Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of the game Space Rain. I'd like to start the video by reiterating that this is still an early access title, meaning the developers, who are a two-man crew currently, are not finished developing all aspects of the game. In fact, at this stage, I would argue it's more of a tech demo than a full-blown video game. But they have put the title up for sale on Steam, so I take that as a sign that it's free game for us reviewers. Also, I'd like to point out that I am not a game developer, nor a very smart human being. So anything I say in this review can and will be a subject of criticism on the internet. With those disclaimers out of the way, let's begin. Now, Space Rain is a fairly ambitious title, in that it tries to tackle a bunch of different genres at once. The developers describe it as, quote, an indie space sim and strategy game featuring ship and fleet combat mixed with management of a private space corporation, end quote. So at its core, you've got a space combat game that lets you engage with it from the cockpit of a fighter in first person or from a tactical overview map in third person. On top of that, you've got to deal with the finances and management of your up-and-coming Space Corps without going into bankruptcy, kind of like me when I was in college. It's an interesting mesh of two vastly different genres, and I think given more time in the development cycle, this would have absolutely hooked me into fanboying for this game. However, with the limited features and how the game is balanced now, I think a lot of people are going to struggle or just straight up not even bother exploring what this game has to offer. Let me break down the management side of this game first. So the whole theme here is that you are part of an AI-controlled space corporation that pioneered the stars for humanity and has since splintered away into your own faction. Now, I don't know if this is just a big coincidence or the devs are trying to warn us about our future AI overlords, but either way, the plot doesn't matter much in the rest of the game. Currently, there is no faction creation system, so no naming and customizing your core to make it feel unique. Instead, you are stuck with BenGamin Incorporated, which wasn't a big deal for me since that's literally my name, but I know that's going to be a real bummer for other players since one of the selling points of this game is you get to manage your own private space corps. And while I think it's a very appealing name, I think other people are going to be not as attached to their unique corporation if they don't even get to name it. It kind of makes the player feel like they work for Benco instead of actually running it. Aside from that, the main thing you manage is the buying and selling of your fleet of ships with their individual weapons and modules that are specific to each class of ship. And the total amount of ships you can field in one outing is dependent on your core rank, which is the leveling system in Space Rain. The more XP you get, the higher your core rank goes, which in turn lets you field more ships. Overall, not the most depth to this system, but in their roadmap, the developers are planning to add a new ship class and modules in addition to ship pilots, and I'm guessing provide bonuses when equipped, so hopefully this will improve over time. Next is the actual gameplay, and this is where I have the most issue with Space Rain currently. First off, you only get one save file, so if you run out of money and lose your entire fleet in an engagement, there's no "would you like to try again?" or "load to the nearest checkpoint." Instead, it's a hard reset on your core rank, and you are thrown right back to the very start. Already, this is starting to feel like a Dark Souls title. Now, the map is divided into quadrants of space, which is made up of several sectors. Each sector is controlled by one or more factions, and gaining control of a sector unlocks further connections in the quadrant. Some sectors are designated contract ops, which lets you complete an infinite amount of contracts for more money and XP. Others are designated raids, which have a specific mission to complete and can only be done once. Right now, we only have the Stygian quadrant, so that's 3 contract op sectors and 3 raids, and all sector missions involve some sort of space combat. The actual combat in this game is super challenging, albeit quite satisfying to play. Like I said earlier, you can go 2 different routes with this one. If you go with the first-person perspective, you have to manually control every parameter of your ship at all times. You've got your throttle, your current speed, the ammo and fuel count, the angle of your ship, the distance between your ship and others, the missile lock-on system, your missile countermeasures, the hull integrity, the radar, your sanity. It's all very overwhelming. Thankfully, the in-game tutorial is super helpful in explaining all this, but be prepared to hard reset constantly for at least the first couple hours. In third-person mode, you are treated to an adjustable tactical overview map that lets you observe the battle as a whole and issue orders to your ships one at a time, but not all at once for some reason. This takes away the stress of being in a cockpit and lets you direct ships at enemies that are strong against, but also costs more ammo, since the AI is designed to keep firing as long as enemies are generally in front of them. And while we're on this subject, the economy of resources you have to manage is a bit messy here. You've got 3 main resources to keep track of: health, ammo, and fuel. If you run out of health, you're dead. If you run out of ammo, you can't shoot, also dead. If you run out of fuel, you can't move anymore, also dead. So before each engagement, you have to crank out the old calculator and weigh out the risk-reward of fighting with only a quarter of gas in the tank left. Of course, you can refuel and rearm yourself at a friendly space station, but in order to fully repair your ships, you have to completely fly out of the sector and then come back. Why they chose to separate it like this, I don't know, but it drastically slows down the actual gameplay by making you fly to the far ends of a sector and using a navigation beacon, which you suspiciously never spawn near. Now let's talk about traversal. In space, there's a lot of, well, space to cover. So you're going to spend a lot of time traversing back and forth between objects and space stations. Now the devs' answer to that is the fast travel mode TM, where your ship moves 5 to 6 times faster than normal but disables your weapons. Definitely a boon to the experience. However, the developers went for a more realistic approach to space travel, so your average round trip between the OBJ and the nearest station will look something like this. Thrilling gameplay, I know. If I can watch almost an entire podcast episode in between missions, then there might be a need for a hotfix here, guys. I know it seems that, based on this review so far, I don't like this game. But I actually do like what Propulsive Games is trying to accomplish here, so let's talk about some of the positives. Graphically, I'm a fan of how things look here. I like the ship designs and how they have a sense of realism to them. And you can tell whoever made these ships cared more about their efficiency than actually making them look cool, although they still do. I also like the way the universe looks, with planets, stars, and asteroids all adding a healthy complexity to each sector, and making each look a little bit different from the others. However, I did try to stress test a bit by flying all the way to a planet during the tutorial, and this happened. Yeah, apparently you can reach some of the planet's surfaces, and turns out they're translucent. Look, I'm all for adding visual depth to the game world, but maybe add the planets to the skybox instead of the playable space guys. I also like the more minor details the devs added to show they care about the game they're working on. They added an in-game database that you can access at any time, detailing every concept and mechanic in the game to allow an easy refresh in case you forget how something works. They've also got a pretty good soundtrack that changes when you're both in and out of combat. Also, the rest of the sound effects of all the weapons and ships help tremendously in keeping track of what's happening mid-gunfight, like when an enemy missile locks onto you, or when your ship is about to explode. This game is definitely incredibly immersive, and is best played in first person so you can experience all the sights and sounds of flying and fighting in space. However, I gotta say that I don't think it's worth picking up right now if you're looking for a full game. Don't get me wrong, what these two guys have created here in just 4 years is phenomenal and lays the foundation for a great game in the future. But it's clear they need more time to add the rest of the content they're working on and could use all the support and feedback they can get. So if you're watching this video, Propulsive Games, I just want to say you guys are making an incredible game and I can't wait to see where it ends up. And to the rest of my viewers, I want to answer 2 questions. Number 1, is this game fun? In my opinion, yes. While the learning curve is rather steep and demands a lot of patience, the first-person combat plus the slow expansion of your corporation's fleet make for an incredibly satisfying gameplay loop. Number 2, is this game worth the current price of $20? My general rule with this kind of question is that the game I'm buying has to either have the same or more hours of satisfying content as the amount of dollars it costs, or it has to be an above average experience to make up for the lack of consistent content. In Space Brain's case, I don't think it has 20 hours of content. I've played about 6 hours now, and I'm halfway done with the Stygian quadrant. This of course will change later when they add more quadrants and content later on, but that's where I stand now. However, I do think the gameplay and concepts here are above average and with enough time will slowly glow up into something great. So if you are a fan of games like Everspace and No Man's Sky, and you want to support an indie dev team trying to make a good game, I definitely recommend trying out Space Rain. Thank you very much for watching this review. If you have any comments or critiques of this video, you are more than welcome to post them in the comments below. If you liked this video or found it helpful, leave a like and subscribe to see more reviews like this in the future. Thank you again for watching, and goodbye.